All right, Colts Nation, more rookie talk. Surprise, right? I mean, after all, this is the greatest Colts draft class of all time, huh? Am I right? Well, I don't know. Maybe not, but it sure feels that way right now. I mean, let's give it 7 to 10 business days before we process rational thought, right? So today I wanted to take a look at the rookie class, but not just as a reaction. I already recorded that, released it on Sunday, I believe, if you want to go watch that. But I wanted to examine where this rookie class that we just got fits into our roster as it currently stands. And now I'm not talking generally. I'm talking each individual guy that we drafted, all the way down to Jake Witt, our 7th round offensive tackle, and maybe I'll throw in an undrafted guy or two. Now, full disclosure, I'm not an expert on any of the guys that we drafted. Maybe Josh Downs, right? I'm a huge Josh Downs guy, but other than that, I'd imagine you're not an expert yourself on these guys, right? We just got them, so I'm trying to figure it out, right? I'm watching a little bit of film, and hopefully as we get closer to the season, as we get through the rookie OTAs and training camp, right, and all of those things, these things will start to hash themselves out a little bit. But in the meantime, I figured I would at least start the discussion, right? So for those of you who haven't been here before, my name is Justin. This is the Riding the Bench Colts cast. If at any point you're enjoying this or you like the Colts just as much as me, go ahead, shoot it a like or subscribe, all those things that people ask you to do. But very most importantly, just enjoy the episode. If today's not the day you subscribe, that's totally fine. I'm really just here for you to enjoy it. That's what's most important to me. So, why don't we start with Anthony Richardson? And I know it's a little bit redundant, right? Because if I'm talking how these guys fit into the roster, I mean, we just drafted Anthony Richardson, number 4 overall in this draft. So presumably, he's going to be right there, right? As the quarterback number 1, or maybe Gardner Minshew will be ahead of him to start the season. I hope he doesn't start off so slow in training camp and things don't look so messy that, we're not using Nick Foles ahead of him as well, right? Assuming maybe he's on the roster when the season comes around. But Anthony Richardson, right? QB1, best quarterback in the history of football. We understand this, right? Okay, so let's move on to Julius Brents. And right off the bat, Julius Brents is a guy that I can see starting day one. I mean, he comes in at 6'3", 210 pounds, immediately the biggest corner we have on the team. I mean, this is a great pick. He's built like those Richard Shermans and people like that, right? So, as I said, strong chance on day one to be starting on the outside for us immediately. I mean, him, Isaiah Rodgers, Kenny Moore have a chance to be a pretty exciting group for us, I would say, right from the start, given that our safeties can help us out, which I will end up getting into as this episode progresses. So, that being said, just I suppose as a little bit of a disclaimer here, if Julius Brents has a tough time getting started, we may see this Colts secondary have a very, very tough time early in the season. But let's see what we got, right? Gus Bradley, defensive guru. As I mentioned before, Richard Sherman, right? Richard Sherman, Gus Bradley, Legion of Boom, right? Is Julius Brents the next Hall of Fame corner? Maybe. I don't know. So, why don't we move on to Josh Downs? Now, Josh Downs, this was a great pick for Indianapolis. And again, as far as he fits in, like a glove, they would say. Bellissimo, the Italians would say. This right here is a guy that I would imagine at the bare minimum on day one is rotating with Isaiah McKenzie out of the slot. Is there anyone else on the roster that you can think of that would be that guy, right? We have Strawn, who won't be. He's definitely just a pure outside guy. Ashton Doolin, maybe, but I doubt it. I mean, they drafted Downs for a reason. So Downs right here, I think is, I hope that he just takes the spot from day one, but I don't, some people maybe not as big on Isaiah McKenzie. I have no problem with this being a rotation until Downs kind of gets up to speed and gets into his rhythm as a rookie. So I just went through the first 3 picks pretty quickly, I think. At least it feels quick. And I think those are 3 day one starters, or at least pieces that are going to be on the field, over 50% of the time. Maybe Richardson not as much, but at the minimum, I think we end up using Richardson like the Niners were using Trey Lance early on, where they were just using him as like a goal line running back, essentially, like the Cam Newton type role. I think these are three guys that are going to make an impact for us immediately. So, home run, even though we're talking football, that was a home run first round for the Indianapolis Colts, first 3 rounds, rather. So now let's move on to Blake Freeland. So this is a guy right here in many ways that actually reminds me of Bernard Raymond coming in last year. He's raw, athletically gifted, which can bode well in pass protection given the proper technique, right? For, the guy's 6'8". So for example, the guy has very long arms, right? If you're a freak athlete, you have long arms. A lot of these edge rushers are going to try to, tidbit for the kids here, they're going to try to fight you with their hands, right? But if you have super long arms and you're able to attack that defensive lineman before he's able to get in on you with his hands, this can neutralize a great pass rusher, right? I'm not saying that's how it's going to work for him, but I'm saying these are the types of gifts that he has. Now, that being said, he definitely has some work to do, at least in the near term. The biggest thing I've noticed in the tape with him so far is that he does tend to get stood up a bit in pass protection, which I'd imagine would only get amplified at the pro level. That being said, this, of course, as I mentioned, is really a technique thing, right? This isn't something that he can't work through given some time. So I'd imagine if it was up to Indy, Freeland probably would not get that much playing time this year, but it may not be up to Indy. That being said, let's view him as a depth piece for right now. We'll see how this develops. Next, I am going to butcher this guy's name so bad. So bad, I already apologized to him in advance. I'm going to try it. I'm reading it. Adetomiwa, Adebawore. Anyone who watched my last video, I think I just at least did a better job than that, right? Listen, name aside, this is a guy that as I've started watching the rookie tape, or rather the tape on our rookies, has really, really turned into a guy that I'm pretty excited about, right? Number one, at 280 pounds, to run a 4.47, it just sounds ridiculous. That sounds nonsensical. And, while great on paper, I was definitely skeptical because it almost sounded too good to be true. I was like, does that transition onto the field, or is this just like a straight line runner? Now, for anything at defensive line, how often are you just running 40 yards straight, right? That being said, newsflash, it does translate on the field. This guy moves like an absolute grizzly bear. I mean, he is horrifying. If you go and watch the tape against Nebraska, I don't know if it was 2021 or last season, in all fairness, there is one play where the running back of Nebraska breaks loose on the right side of the field, and you literally have, I'm going to call him Double A for this episode, you have Double A sprinting, and basically, the running back was outrunning everyone, but he outran his own corner, and he was keeping up with a safety, chasing this running back 25 yards down the field. That right there, if that doesn't give you nightmares, I don't know what will. You must have much less fear in your heart than I do. So the one concern I do have for him right now is that he's kind of in this spot as a player, in terms of his body, as a man, big man, strong man, don't mean to put him down, but he may need to get a little bit bigger or stronger even. My question is, if that is what happens, does he keep all of that speed, right? Or if he goes to the other end, and let's say he loses some weight, one, imagine how fast he might be, right? He might freaking run sub 4.4, but then is he going to be strong enough in that role? So regardless of that, given that we let Yannick Ngakoue walk, I can definitely see this guy rotating in this season as a player that we see on the field. Now, of course, Kwity Paye, Dayon Dangbo, these are two guys we've invested into. Samson Ibukam as well, we just signed. Tyquan Lewis, we also re-signed. These guys are all going to be ahead of him. But after that, let's see if Double A can cement himself into that 5th spot in relief of some of these guys. And maybe, if he shows out in camp, who knows? Maybe he gets a little more playing time than we know or than we think. Let's work on now to Darius Rush. And if y'all watch the Bring the Juice podcast, shout out to those boys. Love their work. They did amazing coverage of the draft this past weekend, if anyone watched it. Derek on that show had expressed some interest in this kid, Darius Rush. Now, I wasn't super familiar, but once again, this is a big-bodied guy, right? I believe him and Julius Brents actually now make up, as I said, Julius Brents, biggest guy on the team. Darius Rush not too far behind. These are the two biggest corners we have on the team, presumably on the outside. And again, with Gus Bradley, I mentioned the Legion of Boom before. Not that these are those guys, but Brandon Browner, Richard Sherman, these are the types of guys that Gus Bradley likes on the outside as well. So now normally I would write off a guy like Darius Rush, 5th round pick, just as a special teamer and a guy that we wouldn't see much of actually as one of the 11 men on the defensive side of the ball on any given play. That being said, beyond Kenny Moore, Isaiah Rodgers, and Julius Brents that we drafted in the 2nd round, there isn't really much proven talent that we have at corner. So Darius Rush, whether we like it or not, I'm not angry about it per se, but he has a chance to compete day one. So this is one of those ones, again, this is very, very early on this type of conversation, right? This is why I said at the top of the video that we have to wait to kind of see how the rookie OTAs and training camp and all this stuff goes. We'll start to learn more about these guys. But he has a chance to come and compete day one as someone who could end up getting quite a bit of playing time for all we know. Now, Daniel Scott. This right here was not an interesting pick per se, but I suppose our safety situation is interesting. So I'm going to use him to speak to it. We seem to have 3 guys that we believe in, right? Julian Blackmon, who is a monster. Nick Cross, who we drafted last year in the 3rd round, who I like quite a bit. And then Rodney Thomas, who really gave us a very out-of-nowhere type of year. What was he, a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder last year, guys? As we're speaking about that, the same range right now. That being said, the Colts must have a lot of faith in these guys. And I'm still kind of hoping that we can get something worked out with Rodney McLeod to bring him back, because there are some questions with those 3. Obviously, Nick Cross, we haven't really seen all that much of, right? Julian Blackmon, we know how great he is, but he was coming off that injury, and we hope he could stay on the field. Rodney Thomas, one great year. We're banking on him to continue, but, you know, he still has to prove it just a little bit, at least in my opinion, that he's going to be someone that's going to be sustainable as a real option at safety. So, you know, with those guys being the big guys that we have, Daniel Scott, maybe unfortunately so, or maybe fortunately so, I don't want to write him off, immediately gets put into a spot where he needs to be ready to play on any given Sunday. And I'm not sure if that's ideal, but it is the situation I think we find ourselves in with Daniel Scott. So then with that, I want to move into Will Mallory, because this guy right here, this is the good stuff. And maybe because I'm like, you know, the world of fantasy football, maybe I'm biased towards the offensive side of the ball, but per the 40-yard dash, take that as you may. That's not like a direct correlation to on-field speed. This is the fastest tight end in the draft, and he has great range, great catching radius, as they would say. And with that, I think that Will Mallory allows us to part ways with Mo Alley-Cox. He's getting paid quite a bit of money, don't have his exact contract in front of us, but we certainly all know and accept that he underperformed his contract last year, right? And when you take into account that not only do we have Jelani Woods, who we're very excited about, but we have Granson, who just when, maybe you're not that excited about a Granson, really has some productive days for us. You have Ogletree coming off of that injury, Pharaoh Brown. Not that these guys are world beaters per se, but I think when you add Will Mallory into the mix, this puts us in a fine position to move on from Mo Alley-Cox. So that's what I'm looking for. Now, I'm not sure if we end up trading Mo, because it does require someone to take him. But at the end of the day, I don't see him on the roster next year. And I didn't see him on the roster next year despite the Will Mallory pick. But in my opinion, personally, prediction from me, I think Will Mallory, I think you could take it to the bank that Mo Alley-Cox will not be an Indianapolis Colt this upcoming year. I don't take pride in that, by the way. I generally try to stay away from putting down our guys. One, because, if I was face-to-face with them, they'd kick my ass. And two, because, I really try to support the guys, man. There's a lot of negativity out there. You can look in the comment section on any social media platform. There's plenty of negativity. I do try to bring the opposite over here. So that being said, we can move past that, given my sentiments. And we could go on to Evan Hull. Now, this right here, I'm interested to see how this one plays out. I haven't watched a ton of him. Again, I'm just getting into the film on these guys now. So, it's not like I have a fully developed stance on all of them. I just wanted to introduce you to what we're looking at here. He does show dual threat ability, which I like, and that's a role that we lack any real proven talent at. Now, obviously, Taylor can do that to some degree, and then we have Zach Moss, who we know is there to take the carries away from Taylor, but provides really next to nothing as a pass catcher. Deion Jackson, though, did give us some good work there last year, so at least as it stands right now, we have to assume that Deion Jackson is the pass catching back, gave us that good work last year. So I anticipate that that's where we're going to go there. It's going to be the same rotation we were looking at with Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, Deion Jackson. Evan Hull, probably a special teamer for now, but again, you just don't know. Rookie classes are weird like that, man. There's guys that pop up all the time. Let's move on to a very interesting prospect right here in Titus Leo. And at first, I didn't think much of this pick at all. This is about the time, 6th, 7th round. You're not thinking a lot of it. I so happen to have a podcast, so I have to think something of it. But as I looked into him a bit, this guy right here is exactly the type of athlete that Chris Ballard likes. Very, very versatile. Now, depending on the game you see him play at Wagner, you'll see him with his hand down on the edge or even standing as a linebacker. He's known for having some decent success in multiple positions. I mean, again, this guy is like a genetic specimen, like no kidding around. Go ahead and look at him. He is shockingly nimble in pass coverage for a guy that did do, even though I said he was versatile and played multiple positions, I listed all of those things. He was mostly with his hand down. But he does have the tools to do anything. Now, it's hard to really project anything more than special teams for Titus to start. But, well, yeah, I mean, sorry for that. My brain just went, my brain farted, right? And it still is. Hard to project anything other than special teams for him. And one problem I think he may run into is that he just might not find a position at all. If anyone remembers, he's still active. I think he's just a free agent. Mark Barron out of Alabama, he was a safety coming out of college. And he, a lot of people acknowledge the fact that he wasn't great in coverage as a safety, but he was just so versatile that he ultimately ended up still being a pretty highly touted prospect. He might have even been a first-round pick, if my memory serves me correct. But as the years progressed in the league, he wasn't good enough to cover as a safety, but he wasn't strong enough to really be playing linebacker. He was a good cover linebacker, but he wasn't big enough. So despite the fact that this was a versatile, big-time athlete, he wasn't able to find the position. He's like a jack of all and a master of none. So that might be a situation that Titus Leo falls into. But that being said, this will be a special teamer, and he does have the type of skill set where there's an off chance. Here's a hot take right here. Remember I said this. We might see this guy make some noise as a rusher when the other team's punting or kicking a field goal. He might make some noise in those situations, whether it's a block or hopefully not a roughing the kicker or something like that. But I could see him making some noise there. And you can't underestimate the importance of having a guy like that. Jaylon Jones, another corner we drafted, can't really see him playing much early at all, right? Kind of the same situation as Darius Rush, except presumably less likely to play because he was a later pick. That's my logic. Probably a special teamer, barring injury. That being said, I haven't watched too much of him, so I don't want to be disingenuous here. I don't know too much about Jaylon Jones just yet. Jack Witt, offensive tackle. This was the final pick in the draft for us. This is a depth piece. Now, that being said, the caveat is that he plays tackle. He has a chance to be important depth for us, right? Now, what makes me say that? Here, let's play a game. I want you to name an offensive tackle on the Colts not named Braden Smith, Bernard Raymond, or Blake Freeland, who we just drafted. Go. 3, 2, 1, done. Out of time. No time to look it up. Tell me who that tackle was. Did you have anybody in mind? I certainly didn't. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know who the other tackles are. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. And I don't mean to disrespect anyone that we currently have on the roster. I'm just saying we don't have proven guys there. So even though Jack Witt's a 7th round pick, you don't know how important he might end up being. I mean, we're not that far removed from starting the season last year with Matt Pryor at our left tackle spot. So, we don't exactly know how that's going to go. Let's see how Jack Witt does in training camp. Has a chance to compete, for a pretty high-end backup role on this team. Now, one undrafted guy I want to name, and he's probably the most popular one, is Emil Ekiyor. I just wanted to mention him because I had mentioned that we needed so much help on the interior offensive line. We didn't address it early in this draft. This right here is a guy that some people had projected as high as the third or fourth round. Now, it's not to say he's like an amazing, amazing guard day one, but with the work we got last year from the Pinters of the world and Will Fries, this guy, if he makes the roster, has a chance to compete for the starting job immediately. He might not. He might just get cut. I don't know. But this is a name to watch out for right here. Emil Ekiyor. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I mean no disrespect, but this is a guy, when the undrafted, that free agent period starts after the draft, the Colts wasted no time. This was the first dude they got. Again, offensive guard. This is a spot we needed. I can see him competing, maybe. Point being is that there's someone to pay attention to. So with that, you've made it to the end of the episode. I wonder how long this one was. Oh, man, 20 minutes? Sorry I kept you around for so long. That being said, if you made it to this part of the video, you couldn't have hated it that much, right? So that's where you shoot the like, subscribe, whatever it is, all the things that people ask you to do, right? If you've done both of those things already and you're looking for another way to help me out, if you're a Colts fan looking to help out a Colts fan, show the love. Hypothetically, if everyone that watched this video shared it with another Colts fan that they know, this thing would grow really, really quick. So I know that's a big ask, and I'm not sure if you want to do it, but if you'd be so kind, I'm just putting it on the table, right? So there it is. That's an episode. Until next time, I'm Justin. This is the Brian DeBenz Colts Cast. Go Colts, baby.